I'm standing here with the 2024 Ferrari 296 GTB, and today, guys, I'm going to take you through all of its cool facts and features. I'm going to take you for a test drive, and then I'm going to give my final thoughts and opinions on this car. And before we get into the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more videos. And without further ado, let's get to it. So the 296 GTB was unveiled in 2021, and it is the most radical change Ferrari has made in a production car in a long time. See, its predecessors like the F8, the 488, the 430, and the 360 always had big V8s. But the 296 is different. See, Ferrari made this with a twin-turbo V6 hybrid that makes 819 combined total horsepower. See, when Ferrari was designing this engine, they wanted it to mimic the V12. So that's why when you actually hear this V6, it kind of sounds like a baby V12. Now, not only that, but this V6 is the most power-dense engine to ever be made. The V6 alone makes 657 horsepower, and then the electric motors make 165 horsepower. Now, another interesting thing about this powertrain are the turbos. See, Ferrari actually made these turbos smaller than on the F8. Now, why would you make smaller turbos, you ask? Well, the reason why is because smaller turbos basically allows them to spool up faster and give you less lag. Now, moving on to the front end of the 296, it obviously has that classic, beautiful Ferrari look. There's some sharpness, but there's also the classy, beautiful, smooth lines that Ferraris are known to have. Now, most people look at this front end and say, okay, cool, it's a beautiful Ferrari, but there's not really a whole lot going on. But that's not true. See, for example, let's look at these headlights right here. Most people will look at these headlights and say, yep, they're cool Ferrari headlights. But little do you know, there's actually a vent that goes into the headlights that goes directly into the brakes to help with cooling and airflow. Now, just another cool feature on the front end of this 296 is this little front splitter right here. Now, most people would say, oh, it's just a front splitter, it's just part of the design, but actually this front splitter by itself generates over 100 pounds of downforce. Now, because this is a mid-engine car, there's obviously no trunk, but you do get a frunk, which is pretty cool. Now, you actually get 7 cubic feet of space in this frunk, which is actually bigger than a 911. Now, the main reason why is because it's really wide, but just in general, you can definitely fit probably like 2 suitcases in here. You can go grocery shopping. You can really do anything that you would need in the front here. Now, just moving on to the side here, one of the things I love about Ferraris is that they just have such smooth and clean lines. You don't need a bunch of wings and intakes and body kit stuff to make it look good. The 296 is so smooth and so classy, and that's one of the reasons why I love it. Now, there's some different options you can get. You can get colored mirror caps. You can also get carbon fiber side skirts if you want. However, I don't really think it's needed unless you're really looking to push this car on the track. And then as we move towards the back, you get this huge intake that feeds air directly into the engine, which obviously just helps with the cooling, but it also just looks really cool. Now, in terms of the wheels and the brakes and all that kind of stuff, you get 20-inch wheels in the front and the rear. You can also option lighter carbon fiber wheels if you'd want. And then in terms of the brake rotors, you get 398 millimeter rotors up front, 360 millimeter rotors at the rear. However, the most important thing on the 296 is actually the brake-by-wire system. Now, if you guys are wondering what is brake-by-wire and why would Ferrari do that? Well, basically, brake-by-wire means that a computer is essentially braking for you. So that means when you push the brake pedal down, you're not actually controlling the hydraulic fluid. There's actually a bunch of ones and zeros and software that's actually doing it for you based on your brake input. Now, moving on to the back of the car, this is by far my favorite view and look of the 296. So starting from the top, you get this huge glass window that you can see directly into the engine. Now, the thing that's cool is that not only can you see the engine on the 296, but you can also see the orange cables from the electric motor. And then as we move towards the lower end of the rear of the car, one of the things that I want to mention that a lot of people don't realize is that although this car doesn't have a bunch of big wings and stuff like the GT3s do, this car actually makes 800 pounds of downforce. Now, how do they do it? Well, like I said earlier, you do get that front splitter that makes a decent amount of downforce. You also get this rear spoiler that you can't see right now because you can't manually control it, but in between the lights, this little black bar right here, this actually raises and lowers as you get up to speed in the 296. Now, where does the rest of the downforce come from? Well, it actually comes from underneath the car. See, the 296 is kind of a stealthy downforce car. You don't see a lot of the downforce because most of it happens underneath the car, which is really cool. Now, some other cool features on the rear end of the Ferraris, you actually get these little vents right here. They essentially go from small and they get bigger. They're kind of like hexagon shape. They look really cool, and I assume they probably just help with the airflow and cooling of the engine. And then also in terms of the exhaust, you get this centrally mounted exhaust, which I think looks really cool and it sounds good. Take a listen. Now, on videos, I will say the interior doesn't look as crazy and flashy as it does in person. The reason why is because the Ferrari interior is minimalistic. There's not a huge infotainment screen anywhere, and there's not a bunch of ambient lighting and all that kind of stuff. But what Ferrari does better than the other brands is they just make everything so well put together. Everything is leather. There's so much customization. It's simplistic, it's minimalistic, and 10, 20 years from now, it's still gonna look and feel good. Now, like I said, there is no infotainment screen. So how do you access Apple CarPlay or do normal infotainment stuff? What's actually on your gauge cluster. Everything in this car is centered around the driver. Even the AC controls are actually pointed towards the driver, so if you're the passenger, you can't actually touch the AC control. Now, with that being said, the passenger does get their own screen. They can see some stuff like how fast the car going, the RPMs, they can actually change the radio in the car. They can also look at the navigation, but they don't have full control over the infotainment. Now, in terms of the seats, these seats look absolutely beautiful. These are the carbon bucket seats. You can also get comfort seats if you want. However, I do think most people who have a 296 aren't going to be daily driving this, so if you can swing the bucket seats, I would definitely get them because they are pretty comfortable. So the entire gauge cluster itself is digital, unlike previous Ferraris that did kind of have that analog tachometer. You no longer get that in the 296 in the newer Ferraris. Now, to actually control the gauge cluster, you actually do it through this little touchscreen wheel right here. The thing that's cool is not only can you actually tap it and it goes up, but you can also kind of swipe up and down, left and right to change your settings how you want it to be. But personally, one of the things I like about the gauge cluster is that they actually still made it look like an analog tachometer. So even though it's digital, it still looks exactly like how the older Ferrari's analog tachometers look. Now, the steering wheel, in my opinion, is one of the coolest parts of this interior. And the reason why, because there's a bunch of different buttons on it. To start off, the turn signals are actually right on your steering wheel. So you don't have to go behind your steering wheel where your paddle shifters would be and click it up and down like you have to do in most cars. But in the 296, your turn signals are right here. Now, one of the weird things about the 296 is actually turning the car on. See, traditionally in Ferraris, if you want to turn the car on, you put your foot on the brake and you press the engine start and stop button. But the 296 doesn't do that. See, on the left side of the steering wheel, you have 4 different drive modes. Because it's a hybrid, you can obviously do your fully electric mode. Then you also have a hybrid mode, you have a performance mode, and then a qualifying mode. Now, common sense would say, well, why don't I just put it in the hybrid mode and start it up? But if you try to do that, it doesn't do anything. It just leaves you in fully EV mode. What essentially happens is once you start driving and moving the car in hybrid mode, then the engine will turn on. So if you want to start the car, you have to either have it in qualifying or performance mode. Now, on the right side of the steering wheel, you get this Manettino switch. Now, Manettino switch is not a new thing. It's been in Ferraris for quite a long time, but what does it actually do? Well, it's essentially a very smart traction control system. See, you have your wet mode, you have your sport mode, you have your race mode, and then you can also turn ESC and CT fully off. Now, the other cool thing about Ferraris is actually putting the car in drive. See, this doesn't look like a normal gear selector. You have a bunch of different letters. You have R, M, A, P, S. What do they mean, and how do I actually drive the car? Well, actually, to drive the car forward, you don't even use the gear selector. You pull both paddles and then you upshift on the right side to put the car in first gear, similar to kind of how a manual works. Now, what do actually these gear selectors mean and what are they for? Well, R is for reverse, M is for manual, A is for automatic, and PS is Ferrari's launch control system. Now, a weird thing about the launch control system in Ferraris is you have to have the car in manual mode in order to engage launch control. But the thing that's even weirder is that even though you're in manual mode launching the car actually shifts for you automatically. And also, just another cool feature on the interior are the door handles. See, usually to open the door in most cars, you have to pull a handle and it unlocks the car. But Ferrari has this little button on the door handle that you push in and it opens the door. All right, guys, so driving the 296, getting into it, have to go manual, have to be in qualifying mode. So I'm just gonna get on it because I'm sure this is what you guys want to see. Oh my gosh, guys. That is just so insanely fast. Oh my gosh, wow. That is just instant power, like absolutely instant power, guys. Right when you floor it, you can hear those tires kind of squealing. But wow, that really takes off. So the first thing I noticed, other than just the pure insane speed, is the sound. The sound's actually really good. I drove an F8 Tributo. I have a review on my channel of that car. This car actually, I think on the inside, honestly sounds better, a little bit more than the F8. Checking the turn radius now. Let's see how it does. Not very good. Turn radius is not very good on the Ferrari. I don't think anyone's surprised, but yeah, turn radius not very good. I mean, this thing is just so incredibly fast. It's like the car's moving faster than your brain can think. The other thing that's nice to have is the little lights that light up on the steering wheel, because this thing revs so fast that you don't even know when to shift. So having these lights as kind of like a visual marker is definitely nice to have. So the first thing I'll say about the brakes is the pedal travel is super short. It's literally maybe like 2 inches at most. but it does feel kind of weird. I feel like you have to give more pressure on the brake pedal than you would expect to get the car to stop, especially like in low speed settings. Now these are carbon ceramics, so they do probably have to warm up a little bit before they really start to grab. Now the next thing, and I'm sure you guys can kind of notice by the video, I hope it's not too shaky, but this suspension is pretty stiff over the bumps. My GoPro is bouncing up and down, driving on fairly smooth roads. So you guys kind of wondering, like, how does the 296 handle so good? Well, part of that is because the suspension is just so stiff. I keep on forgetting that the turn signal is on the steering wheel. Let's see, handling. So as you guys can see, like, even though I'm getting on throttle early, the car's still putting the power down. Now, it's something that I actually read online that's pretty interesting, is that with the 296, Ferrari actually limits the horsepower to give you the most optimal amount of grip possible. So what that means is that you're not actually getting 819 horsepower 100% of the time. What you're actually doing is Ferrari's software and, you know, advanced technology is essentially giving you the optimal amount of horsepower for your tire's grip. So even though you're in race mode, you kind of start to feel when you're driving that, like, sometimes it feels like the power isn't fully there for like a split second and then it turns on. What this actually does is it actually maximizes like your 0 to 60 and your quarter-mile times. Now, because the suspension's a little bumpy, what Ferrari does is they give you this little red button right here on the Magnetino switch. If you press this, I believe it gives you the bumpy road mode, and it should soften things up a little bit for you guys. So hope my video is not too bumpy. Now, Ferrari does actually give you a front lift if you want it. I haven't really found that you really need it, but if you guys are like going up a driveway or something, you probably would need it. All right, so I'm gonna try a little launch control right here. I hope I don't mess this up. From what I heard, it's kind of confusing. You have to be in manual mode. You push the PS. I think it beeps 3 times. Okay, and then should shift automatically for me. Let's see. Wow, that was really fast. So it does shift automatically for you, which is pretty cool. But wow, that is incredibly fast for a rear-wheel drive car. That power is so insane, guys. It's literally pushing me back into my seat. I have to brace my core just to be able to handle this car. Now, gear shifts are awesome. Downshifts, it's literally immediate downshifts. Upshifts are as well. It's just like an immediate. It's crazy. So what are my thoughts on this car? It's pretty insane. It is super, super fast. The handling is surprisingly good. And in the bumpy road setting, the suspension actually isn't too bad. But without the bumpy road setting, it does get a little kind of jumpy and hoppy. But that's expected because this is a mid-engine Ferrari. So even when the steering wheel's turned, you can get on it. Now I'm in race mode, which is supposed to give you a little bit less traction. But even with that, the car just puts the power down. I mean, Ferrari's really knocked out the park. Now, the thing that's kind of crazy is that the 296 is actually just as fast as the SF90 for a much cheaper price. And that's what I kind of find surprising, is that Ferrari would give a car that is essentially the same thing as the SF90 mid-engine supercar, but for a much cheaper price. I don't know why Ferrari would do that. I think that's kind of contributing as to why the SF90 values are starting to fall. But the 296 is honestly a value Ferrari. And I know it's kind of weird to say value Ferrari because Ferraris are super expensive and everyone knows that, but honestly, compared to like what else you could get in the lineup, this is by far the best car for performance, handling, sound, speed, just everything you could possibly think of. Let's test the brakes. Alright guys, so that wraps it up for the video today. I hope you enjoyed this 296 GTB review. Let me know in the comments below if you think Ferrari overdid the 296, if you think they kind of made the SF90 pointless. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you guys want to see more of these videos. And without further ado, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.